Hello, it's me, Ariza Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and effectively. So today I want to talk about hot steam vents again. These steam vents produce a relatively small amount of water at a very high temperature, and they can be used both as a water source for your duplicants, providing them with food and oxygen, and also as a power source because the hot steam can be run through a steam turbine building to generate power. Now, this turbine works by being placed on top of tiles. We put it over here and you can see that there's a green rectangle where the steam is drawn into each of those 5 little inlets. Each inlet will draw in 0.4 kilograms per second of steam max, and the steam turbine will output up to 2 kilograms per second of 95 degrees C water based on how much steam is coming in through here. Now, the turbine generates up to 850 watts of power for 200 degrees C steam coming in. But you'll notice that the steam coming from a steam vent is actually much hotter than this. Normally it's 500 degrees C, but we've actually geotuned this steam vent with the new geotuner building to get it all the way up to 600 degrees C. And any extra temperature above 200 degrees C, the heat is deleted instead of being turned into power if you just hook it up straight to a steam turbine. So this wastes some energy that you could be using for your dupes. So the question we're trying to solve today is, how do you get 100% of this temperature energy into power for your duplicants? Now, we tried solving this in the past with our previous build by blocking some of the inlets to the steam turbine. This steam turbine with 3 inlets blocked can only process 0.8 kilograms per second of steam coming in, but provided that steam is hot enough, it will still produce the max 850 watts of power. And the actual temperature that you can extract 100% of the heat energy from with 2 inlets is around 360 degrees C. So it's a lot better, but it's still not perfect. It's good enough in the early game when you're just trying to get your steam vent set up to get some initial water and power if this is your only option on, say, the flipped asteroid. But if you're trying to actually get 100% efficiency out of that 600 degrees C steam, then you're going to want a slightly different build. And that's what we're going to cover today. So you can get your steam vent up to 600 degrees C by building a geotuner. This is a new building that you have to put in a laboratory. So you have to have 2 research buildings, which could be geotuners, and a light source. And you have to supply this building with bleach stone. So you're probably going to get this bleach stone through a bleach stone hopper or possibly through squeaky parts. And if you geotune it with 5 geotuners, then you can double the output of your steam vent and increase the temperature by 100 degrees. You can see the breakdown here on this particular steam vent. So we've actually cherry-picked a very high output steam vent for this case. It produces a very high output of steam for a very short period of time. And this is the relevant worst case scenario for steam vent design, because these things overpressurize really easily. They overpressurize at only 5 kilograms per tile of background pressure. And if you're getting up to 14 kilograms per second of steam, that's going to overpressurize very quickly. So this build is also going to draw out the steam into a room where it can be harvested and the power can be extracted from it gradually without this vent overpressurizing. That's very important. Most normal steam vents, like some of the ones up here, these have a normal output range somewhere between 2 and 4 kilograms per second over a slightly longer duration, depending on the steam vent. And this one is erupting 7 kilograms per second ungeotuned. So this is an extreme case. But yeah, we're going to have a look at this, and we're going to make a 100% efficient build that gets all the heat energy out. What you're going to want to do, before you do anything messing around with the steam vent, you're going to want to make sure that it's blocked before you expose any steam. The steam is so hot, it's going to melt a lot of the raw elements and biomes that you might find these in. It's not like a cool steam vent where you can just let it off gas harmlessly. Keep it covered up until you know what you want to do with it. So what I would suggest in this case, leave this one tile here covered up with whatever natural tiles are in the area. And don't necessarily worry about analyzing it yet either. You can't analyze it until this tile is uncovered. This build should work for all steam vents. So you don't need to analyze it first. Only analyze it when you're ready to actually have it erupt and be harvested. So the tile that you want to block is this tile here, which is one tile off the ground, and it's the second tile in from the neutronium for the vent. Make sure this is blocked and the vent won't overpressurize. So once you've found your steam vent and you've uncovered most of it, you're going to want to make a big vacuum room to build this whole building. You do not want the steam interacting with the outside and condensing and just generally being annoying. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to make a room that's bigger than it needs to be. I'm going to have it go all the way up here. Don't worry, the build isn't quite this big. But we're going to vacuum out a big room just so that we can build everything safely. I want to make sure that when you're building this, you can build it in a way that your duplicates can handle well in the game. And what we'll do is we'll just put some tiles here, make them insulated to avoid any heat transfer, and then you can just use bottle emptiers like this, put them in either tile, and then just fill it up with the liquid of your choice. You want to make sure it's not going to boil at reasonable temperatures, so I'd recommend using oil instead of crude oil. You're not really going to expose super hot steam to this area, but have a lot of thermal mass in this lock. You don't want it to break under any circumstance. Just fill it all the way with oil. That's a fairly safe strategy. So, as you can see, we've simulated venting the entire room. So you now have a vacuum in here, and if we unpause it, the steam vent isn't overpressurizing because the one tile here is blocked. This is very important that you leave a tile there. Okay, so we've uncovered the vent, and we've got a big room where we can start building stuff and eventually fill it with hot steam. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to get the steam away from the vent and into a storage zone so that the vent doesn't overpressurize. Now, there's two ways that you normally think about doing this. The first one is the steam turbine, but we don't want to use it in this case because that's going to delete the majority of the heat energy in the steam. The other method for moving gases is the gas pump, and this is a really, really bad way of handling hot steam because even a steel pump will overheat at 275 degrees C, and this steam is coming out at least 500 degrees C. So not a good idea. Also, they're very power inefficient. It takes 240 watts to pump 500 grams of gas per second. This steam vent is erupting 14 kilograms per second of steam when it's max geotuned. So you're going to need 28 gas pumps to handle all of that gas. It's not a good idea. So the third method, which I want to show you, is what we're actually going to go with, which is the drip pump. So this is going to work by dripping liquids in such a way that it forces the gas out away from the vent into the surrounding area. And how we set this up is going to be a little bit complicated, so bear with me. So first of all, we're going to put some conductive metal tiles in. We'll put one either side of the geyser here, and then we'll make a little exit here. If you're doing this without geotuning the vent, for this whole setup for the rest of the video, you only need to build one half of this structure. This half will be symmetrical and is designed for the fully geotuned vent in mind. So when you don't geotune it, you're getting less than half of the heat energy through, and you can literally just use half of the build. But we're going to do it symmetrically so you can see what we mean. So what will happen is we will put a liquid vent in here, make it out of something that's definitely not going to melt. We're going to make it out of iron ore in this case. And that is going to drip liquid onto this tile, which is going to have another heavier liquid at the bottom. And that's going to cause the gas to teleport out from this tile into this tile. And because there's liquids in the way here, the gas won't be able to force its way back into the room like it wants to. So this is going to work out pretty well. We're using aluminium for these metal tiles. We want them to be conductive. We want the whole room to equalize the steam temperature very well. So that's why we're making them out of a conductive material. Aluminium is the most conductive refined metal you'll have access to early on. If you don't have it, cobalt or pretty much any other refined metal is decent. Diamond tiles are also pretty good, but aluminium is technically the best, so that's what I'm using here. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to put 4 of them in here. So we're just gonna, let's cover it like this, and then we'll put another 3 vents over here. And then we're going to drip the liquids through. Now, the first liquid which you're going to have on the bottom, it needs to have a couple of properties. 1, it needs to be heavy. It needs to sink compared to the liquid you're dripping on top of it. 2, it needs to be liquid within a range of around 120-ish to over around 600 degrees-ish. And there's not many materials in the game which are liquids at those temperatures. And 3rd, we want it to be conductive. So I think the best material for this is liquid uranium. So what I would recommend you do is take some wire segments and build them out of uranium ore. You can find this uranium ore either in the radioactive biome or just in the random lump of uranium you can often find in your starting biome on most starts. can see my asteroid types guide video for more information on that. We're going to put these uranium wire segments here. And what will happen is we're going to get the steam to melt them into little liquid blobs that cover up these tiles here. And this could be a little bit annoying, so we'll see what that process is like when you're trying to do it. But that's going to result in 25 kilogram tiles of liquid here. The uranium is quite viscous, so it won't drip down here at 25 kilograms. And that's going to be what we use. And we're using uranium again because the melting point of uranium is bugged. Or it's not bugged, the devs put in the wrong value. It melts in-game at 133 degrees C. It should be melting at 1130 degrees C. But nobody tell the devs. So it turns into liquid uranium, and then that doesn't turn into a gas until 4132 degrees C. So it's going to stay liquid throughout the operational temperature of this whole steam vent setup. Steam is going to come out at max 600 degrees C, and it's going to cool down to just below 200 degrees C when we take it out as we're extracting the power and the water. So it should be fine in this case. Now, in terms of the liquid that we're actually going to drip on it, we still want this liquid to be heat resistant, we want it to be conductive, and we want it to be lighter than uranium. So I think one of the best choices for this is petroleum. You don't want to use crude oil, because crude oil is going to sink compared to the uranium. It's not a good idea. Crude oil is a very heavy liquid in general. So you can set up whatever petroleum source you want, a petroleum boiler, an oil refinery, whatever you want. And you want to send it along down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some liquid valves in. We want to keep these valves outside of the room because we don't want them getting too hot. If you're feeding them hot petroleum, feel free to use steel valves. Otherwise, you can use a different material and it's not going to cause too many issues. So we're going to put those in, and then we're just going to put some insulated pipes in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed them around. We're going to feed them around the tiles into the vents like this. Now there is going to be some heat transfer in these tiles here. That's okay. The liquid isn't going to get hot enough to boil in the pipes from the heat transfer from these tiles, and it's more important that we keep the temperature of the steam in the storage zone more evenly distributed. So that's why we're putting insulated pipes through conductive metal tiles in this case. It's all right. So we're going to do that. You're going to very importantly want to set this to a very low flow rate. You only want 0.1 grams per second of liquid flowing through all of these vents. So even for the max geotune setup, where we have 4 vents instead of just 2 on one side, this is only going to consume 0.4 grams per second of liquid, which is 240 grams per cycle. So as soon as you can make even a single blob of petroleum, that's going to last for dozens of cycles. And then the more you can make, the longer it's going to last. And by the time you actually run out from your initial batch of petroleum, you're probably going to have some reliable petroleum infrastructure set up, especially if you've got all this steam power to work with. You can use these to boil petroleum, but that's definitely a video for another day. So you need to get a duplicant to come down here and activate these valves. So we're just going to do that quickly, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so Ada has come and she has activated all of these valves. So they've now got an average flow rate of 0.1 grams per second, and now off she goes to live the rest of her miserable existence. So we can turn these off yellow alert, and then we can actually start pumping the liquids in. Now, maybe we don't do that at first. If you just pump the liquids in, you're going to end up with a little blob of petroleum down here, and that's not what we want. What we actually want now is we want the vent to erupt for a little bit so that the uranium forms. Now, the issue is this steam vent is going to want to overpressurize at first. So perhaps what we do for now is we just open these 2 tiles up so the steam can definitely escape. And then gradually it will heat the wire. So let's just remove this tile and see how it goes. So now the vent is open. And we're just going to look at one of these wire segments. So the steam vent is now erupting. The wire is rapidly heating up, and the steam is condensing off of the initial heat capacity of the pipes and the tiles. But eventually, all of these elements are going to get over 100 degrees C, and we're just going to be left with the steam. Now you can see what happened is the wire melted, formed a liquid, and then it condensed again into depleted uranium. as the setup gets hotter in this vacuum room, all of these segments will eventually melt. It might take a little bit of time, but you'll eventually end up with 4 liquid blobs. We just got 1 left. It's trying its best. The steam vent is going to overpressurize while you're doing this, especially if it's got a high output. But you can see this is heating up. Okay, and now we actually have all of the liquid uranium in blob form, which is what we want. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to seal this off completely. So we'll put some tiles here. We'll just let that heat transfer over. Yep, this isn't going to melt. That's good. It's all hot enough in here now. And now we can actually hook up the pipes. So we'll just copy and paste this across here. And then we'll let the petroleum out. That is going to flow into these valves. Oh, we got an errant water blob. Okay, well, that's fine. Actually, that's not fine. That's going to send water into this vent now, so it's not going to work. In fact, for now, actually, the water is working in the pipe as well. Look at this. So because the water flow rate is so low... Okay, I'm glad we stumbled across this because this wasn't planned at all. So because the water flow rate is so low, it's going to superheat in the pipe, but because the flow rate is so low, it's not actually going to burst. Now, you absolutely need to make sure that this vent won't ever overpressurize. These liquid vents will overpressurize at 1,000 kilograms per tile. So long as you're not storing that huge amount of steam in there, I'll be fine. Now you can see it's not working because the steam is flashing immediately. So, yeah. We've had a little bit of a roller coaster of emotions here, but it worked at first, but now because it's flashing the steam before it's actually being deleted by the liquid dripping effect, it's no longer teleporting the gas out of this area, effectively. Or actually, yeah, look, so you can see what's happening is we're getting 100 milligrams of steam here instead of vacuum. So that water is state changing and getting teleported over here. So you don't want this to be happening. You want all 4 pipes to be petroleum so that it's all... the steam is being teleported over here rather than this steam being teleported in here. So we're going to fix that pipe. Moral of the story, use petroleum for this. Don't use a liquid that will state change. And yeah, we'll be right back once we fix this pipe. Okay, so now we've got the liquid petroleum in all 4 pipes. We've got rid of the water from the pipes. So now if we look out here, you'll see all 4 drip pumps are working, all 4 vacuum tiles are forming, and the steam by the vent is already in the micrograms region. These drip pumps work in such a way that because they're teleporting the steam out, the more steam is in this room, the faster they will work. So with 4 drip pumps, this geotuned steam vent producing 14 kilograms per second is never going to actually overpressurize, because all the steam is going to get dumped in your outside room first, and then do whatever it does out here. So that's good. So we're clearing the steam vent, and you can see now we're just forming a vacuum, and it's all vacuumed out. So that's all good. So the next part is actually going to be storing the steam and distributing the water and the power out. So that's going to be a little bit more complicated. So what we'll do is we'll actually draw out what the storage zone is going to look like now. Now this room is hot enough. So we're going to put some more tiles in here, and then we're going to put some tiles over here. So 3 tile gap between the top drip pump. And we're going to bring this around here. And then we're going to run some more aluminium tiles down here. And then we're going to lead them over here. But your dupes will be building this. They'll be building it gradually. So the heat will transfer away from the liquid uranium into the aluminium tiles. So these will recondense into depleted uranium. The steam will flood back into here temporarily. However, these will remelt again once the steam vent erupts again, provided you didn't dump too much steam into this room in the first place. That is just one thing to bear in mind, that the heat capacity, you want to slowly increase the heat capacity of the room so that the uranium stays liquid and you're going to keep this venting. What you can even do is, while you're trying to get it up to temperature, you could use crude oil and then eventually replace it with liquid uranium, but that might also be quite complicated. Let me know how it goes if you build this in the comments. So yeah, Now we're going to keep extending this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend these aluminium tiles one this way, and then we're going to build more aluminium over here, and we're going to build it up to this point. So we're going to leave a suspicious looking 5-tile gap here. I'm going to put that in there. And again, we're going to let it keep running for a bit so that the heat from the steam can transfer into the tiles. As we're dripping the petroleum in as well, that is also technically cooling the setup, but there's so little liquid moving through here that it doesn't make a big practical difference. And you can see the steam that erupted previously is now condensing in here. These two drip blocks are much more thermally isolated than these ones down here, so these might stay liquid for a bit longer. The more liquid you have in these tiles, the more resilient it will be, but also bear in mind that once you get past sort of about 75 kilograms per tile, the uranium is going to spill down here, and then the effect won't work anymore. But it should also be noted, as we're dripping the petroleum in here, there's so little of it, it's still actually deleting itself, so we're still getting some interesting behavior going on here. It's not just filling up the room with petroleum, so at least you don't have to worry about that. Now, the next thing. So, once we build this whole area, we're going to put some insulated tiles in here, and we're going to build our actual steam turbine room. Now, these steam turbines are going to be used to extract the water from the vent itself once the steam has been cooled down enough by the rest of the apparatus, which is going up here. So we want to make sure these are completely thermally separated from everything else. And we've got a little bit of steam in here, obviously, because this whole room has been filling with steam, which is not amazing. But that's fine, because this will eventually condense, and you put more stuff in here. So you can make this steam turbine out of lead. We're going to be actively cooling the steam turbine, so it's never going to get to the point of melting. And you're going to want to build this insulated room and thermally insulate whatever's going on here before you actually build any of this, to make sure it doesn't melt. If you want to be on the safe side, you can just build it out of iron, but we're going to build it out of lead. So we're going to put 2 steam turbines here, and what we're going to do as well is we're going to hook up some thermosensors. So these, we're going to make these out of iron, and we're going to connect these to the steam turbines. And these are going to tell the steam turbines to run only if the steam is below 200 degrees C. Because if it's below 200 degrees C, that means we can extract 100% of the power, 100% of the heat out of it into power, which is what we're aiming for. So that's the condition under which these steam turbines will work. So let's just duplicate the wire, put it on the other side. Again, if you're not geotuning this, only 1 turbine is needed. Now, how do we know this? Well, if we look at the steam turbine once it's been the steam vent once it's been analyzed, you'll see the eruption average output, which is bearing in mind the eruption period information of the steam vent, is 2.52 kilograms per second. So because each steam turbine can handle 2 kilograms per second max, we're going to need 2 steam turbines. But if it's not geotuned, we're only getting half of that mass, so 1 steam turbine will be sufficient for the ungeotuned steam vent. So we're going to build that stuff here, and again, we're just going to let stuff continue to cool down a little bit. We're going to let it all sort of start exchanging heat. These uranium tiles are eventually going to condense. And then this will start erupting again, and it should heat everything up again, eventually. And this liquid uranium will actually condense at around 130 degrees C. So there you go. Now, in this case, the petroleum is actually dumped here, and it's moved the uranium, which is not really what we were looking for. Because the drip pump won't work like this. So if this happens, you're going to need to come in and sweep this up, and then move it again, or build another wire segment. So we'll do that, and we'll be right back. So you can see we moved some more uranium in here. It's turned back into depleted uranium because it's cooled down. The petroleum is still flashing, so this blob hasn't misbehaved. And we'll wait for the steam vent to erupt, and then we'll be right back. So the steam vent is back to the point where it's about to erupt. And again, as a reminder, we're not using crude oil for this drip pump like we normally would, because when the steam vent erupts, it might get hot enough to turn the crude oil into petroleum, and then the whole thing is going to break. So that's why we're not using it. So if we play it on regular speed again, The steam is coming out of here. The drip lock is not operational at the moment, so it is increasing in pressure rapidly. We have a look at what's going on with the tiles. You can see we've actually got a little bit going on, and you can actually see the depleted uranium has remelted in these top two. So now steam is getting teleported out of these bits, which is handling a lot of the overpressure, but not all of it. You can see it's still occasionally overpressurizing. But as the temperature increases in this depleted uranium again, it is melting back into place, and then more of these drip pumps come online. So now we've got all four operating, and the steam vent is not overpressurizing anymore. And again, this is putting out almost 14 kilograms per second of steam, which is huge. So you're just going to want to gradually let it erupt as you're building all of this stuff in here. You'll want some kind of, again, you'll want some kind of liquid lock just so you can get in here and leave it all as vacuum and thermally isolated from the rest of the map. Once you've got it to this stage, what you're going to want to do as well is you're going to want to build some temperature plates in here. So these are going to be used to evenly distribute the temperature of the steam from the vent to these turbines over here, because it's a bit of a long way for the heat to go. I would recommend making these out of diamond. Diamond is very conductive and can be found in abundance in oil biomes. So this could be a good use for the diamond in the first oil biome you find if you've got a hot steam vent that you need to use stuff with. Now these have a lot of thermal mass as well. Diamond has less thermal mass than a lot of materials, so it's not going to suck too much heat out of this uranium. But what we'll do is we'll build it diagonally so that each cross of influence from the temperature plate is covering a tile. You don't need to cover the whole thing in temperature plates. Just covering half of it in temperature plates will do. And we want to make sure that they're exchanging temperature between the metal tiles, where most of the heat transfer is going, into the steam on both sides. You do not want these temperature plates to be transferring heat into the insulated tiles. So we're just going to put them down here. And again, we're going to do the exact same on the other side. It's an exact mirror. So that's going to go over here. And as you can see, the temperature in this room after 2 eruptions is now high enough that it doesn't really matter that we put these temperature plates in. It's going to stay above the uranium condensation temperature, so that's all good. So, now we've built this room, the question is, how do we actually get the heat energy out? Because as it is at the moment, this room is just going to keep getting hotter and hotter until it's eventually 600 degrees steam. Are we going to suck the heat out in such a way that the steam turbines are only operating on materials that are 200 degrees or lower? Well, this is the interesting part. So what we actually do, now that we've got this working, we can open up these insulated tiles, and we can put some steel doors in here. So we want some mechanized airlocks. Steel is the most conductive material you can build these doors out of. If we could build them out of aluminium, refined aluminium, we would, but we can't. So these are going to go here. And for the Geotune version, we're going to want 8 of them. And then we're going to connect those to another aluminium element here. If you don't have aluminium, maybe you don't have a big forest biome, or you lack the capacity to refine as much metal, you can make these out of diamond as well. It will be less conductive, and the build works best with as conductive materials as possible. But diamond can be used as a substitute for this. And what we're going to do is, we're going to put a sensor over here. A normal thermosensor can just go here in the middle. And that is going to connect to these doors. And that's going to detect what the temperature of this room is. Right, so these doors are closed at the moment. This means that the temperature can transmit from the bottom row of aluminium tiles to the top row. And that's happening fairly quickly. But if the temperature gets too hot, say if the temperature is above 195 degrees, then this thermosensor can open all of these doors, and when they're sealed like this, it will form a vacuum. And a vacuum is a perfect insulator. So that way, we're no longer getting heat exchange between these two tiles. And if you have steam turbines, then in this room, that's eventually going to cool this area down below 200 degrees C. It might waste a little bit of power at first while it's getting up to down to the target temperature, but then eventually you can control when the heat is going into this room exactly based on what you want. When the room is too cold, it will close the doors, and you'll get more heat coming in through the stored steam in this room. You see it's already stored to about sort of 25 kilograms per tile over here. And then when this gets hot enough again, the doors will open and the heat will stop getting transferred and the steam turbines can get to work. That's basically the core premise of the entire build. So now let's actually just build the rest of the steam turbine infrastructure so you can visually see what I'm talking about. So these aluminium tiles are going to extend all the way over here. And then we're going to surround this area with some more insulated tiles. So this area has been filling with steam. That's not an accident. We want this room to be full of steam. We probably want it to be full of a bit more steam than this, realistically. But yeah, we're going to completely seal this room. And then that's going to transfer the heat over. You can actually see as we built the material, the room cooled down, so the doors closed, and then it heated up again, so the doors opened. That's demonstrating the function we're going for. And then we're just going to put our steam turbines up here. So we're going to use 6 steam turbines to actually extract all of the heat energy from the vent and get it to the point where we can pump the water out. So these are going to go over here. Now, we're using 6 steam turbines in this case because the eruption average, bearing in mind the eruption period of the vent, is 2.52 kilograms per second when it's GO2. The specific heat capacity of steam is 4.179 kDTUs per whatever. And then the temperature differential is 600 minus 200, which is the target temperature. So that's 400. And the net result is around 4,200 kDTUs of cooling required. Now, each steam turbine operating at 200 degrees C is converting about 877 kDTUs of heat energy into 850 watts. In practice, you're going to need some of the... you're going to actually need to use some of the cooling capacity of the steam turbine to cool itself, or rather, we're going to use the thermoaquature unit in this room to cool all of the steam turbines. So you're not going to get quite that level of efficiency, but we only need about 700 kDTUs of cooling per steam turbine for this to handle the heat flux from the steam vent. And even with the cooling requirements, that is more than enough to be handled by 6 turbines. And again, if we're not geotuning this, you can just literally halve this whole setup here and just use 3 turbines up here, and that will be fine for any steam vent. So we put those in, and yet again, we're just going to automate those the exact same way we've automated this one down here. We're going to put thermosensors at each location in here. We're going to hook them up with automation wires to each steam turbine. And they're all going to be set to below 200 degrees C, like this one. So they're only going to operate when they're using all of the available heat energy in the steam. If it's too hot, they won't activate. Now, if this does get too hot, you're going to have to cool it down somehow by dumping more water in here. But we'll get to that later. So we're also going to put in the thermoaquature tuners. These need to be made out of steel. This room is going to need to be very conductive. And the gold amalgam, even though it has an overheat temperature of 175 degrees, this room is going to be operating at higher than that temperature, and the gold amalgam sucks. It's not conductive at all. The machine overheats really easily in even moderately cool steam rooms. So just use steel for this. You'll thank me. So we're going to put one on each side. And then we're going to hook up some automation for that. But we'll focus on the pipe work in a minute. So just put a liquid pipe thermosensor over here. This room shouldn't get above 200 degrees C most of the time, but again, I'm still going to suggest you build it out of stuff that's not going to melt at 600 degrees, just in case something goes wrong. So we're going to put these sensors in here, and we're just going to hook them up like this. And I'll talk about what you actually set them to once we do the piping overlay. And last but not least, you're going to want to put some more temperature plates in here. So again, we're just going to put them along the bottom. That was not what I meant to do. There you go. I'm hoping it doesn't break everything. So we're just going to put these along here. In fact, actually, hold on. What we're going to do is... Oh, you know what? This is fine. Again, we can space these out roughly every other one. We just want to make sure that we're not putting a temperature plate right next to an insulated tile at any point. So we unpause that. That's going to absorb a fair bit of the heat capacity. So this room has cooled down now. These doors are going to close. And that's going to transfer the heat back into here pretty quickly. And you can also see we're getting a lot of water condensing on these steam turbines. All the steam in this room is condensed because of the mass of the steam turbines, so that's fine. So that's roughly what this room is going to look like. So the next thing we actually need to do is we need to... Yeah, just need to set up the pumping overlay now. So, what we're going to do. The coolant, we're going to use polluted water for the coolant because it has a high specific heat capacity. You can use regular water for this if you want, but it's not mandatory. Polluted water has a slightly higher temperature range, so there's a bit more of a fail-safe if something goes wrong. But I wouldn't recommend it anyways. We're going to put some pipes in here. So this is going to be the output of the steam turbine that is actually drawing the water out of the system. And we're just going to dump it outside this zone. I'm going to put it here. We're going to put some more insulated tiles along this whole bit here. And what will happen is some water will condense in here. Eventually. Yeah. And then the water will just be able to pour out of here into wherever you need it to go. Or you can just set up a pipe and just hook it up to wherever else on the map you need the water to go. But we're just going to have it vent out the sides for now, just to illustrate the concept. I'm going to put our liquid source here. Again, it doesn't really matter where you get this from. Any liquid source will do. We're just going to use a dev pump just to illustrate the whole setup. And the cooling loops are going to be independent for each side. Each side is going to have one aqua tuner's worth of cooling. One aqua tuner isn't quite enough to cut cooling all 8 of these steam turbines for the max geotuned case. If it's not geotuned, one aqua tuner for these 4 steam turbines is fine. If it is geotuned, you need 2 aqua tuners for 8 steam turbines. So that water is going to come in here, and we're just going to put a bridge here. And that's going to be how we feed the water onto the loop. We are going to... Let's see. So that's how we bring the water onto the loop. Let's start actually building the cooling loop first. So we're going to start the sensor. This is going to go into the aqua tuner. If the sensor activates, then the aqua tuner activates, so the water will come out of here. We're then going to lead a pipe out of here. And if it doesn't activate the thermal aqua tuner, the water is instead going to bypass up this pipe. You've seen me do this a lot before, if you've watched any of my videos. We're going to bend it around here, and then we're going to put a bridge on here. And because that bridge is directly dumping the liquid after the outlet of the thermal aqua tuner, that's going to keep the coolant loop circulating regardless of whether the thermal aqua tuner is running or not. So this is very important. And then we're going to hook it up here, and we're just going to send the coolant all the way around the steam turbines with radiant liquid pipes. Let's actually put in the draining pipes for these steam turbines first, because these steam turbines are just extracting the heat energy from the steam vent. We just want to completely recirculate the water from these steam turbines into this room. And we're literally just going to do it like this for every single steam vent. It's just going to come straight down, and then it's going to vent into here. And we're going to dump the water from each steam turbine directly underneath it. So we'll just do the same on this side. It's an exact mirror. So it's going to go over here, and then once we've done that, we'll actually put in the radiant liquid pipe. Aluminium is the best material for this. If you don't have it, any other refined metal will do. Don't use depleted uranium. Depleted uranium is not very good for this. It must be said. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to put it like this. We're going to put a bridge over here. Doesn't really matter what you make that out of. And then we're just going to send this pipe down here. We're going to put another bridge in. I'm going to send this pipe down here as well. That is going to go up past here. And then we'll just put another bridge over here. Put another bridge over here. Hook up the pipe. And then that's going to come down here. Right. So now that we've actually got the coolant pipe coming all the way down here, we're going to lead it to the steam turbine in such a way that we can actually feed the coolant back in here without getting heat transferred from the insulated pipe to the radiant tile. We want to avoid having insulated pipe in the radiant tile at all, because that's going to cause us to use more power on cooling the liquid, which is not what we want. So we're going to put a bridge here. We're going to lead this pipe down here. And then let's actually adjust this slightly. So we'll put the bridge here. That's fine, because it's going into the insulated tile on one side. We're going to bridge this here, and then we're going to connect this down here. And because the liquid source is directly after the bridge outputs from the cooling loop, it's going to ensure that the loop recirculates, and that once the loop is full, it's not going to overfill because of the liquid source. So you can just leave the liquid source plugged in, and it's not going to cause any issues. So we're going to send that down there, and then we're just going to snake this around a little bit. Again, we're going to use aluminium pipe for this. It doesn't matter specifically what you do with this. So we're just going to send it up here. And then that's going to come out of here with some insulated pipe. And then, importantly, what we're going to do here is we're going to bridge over the aluminium tile. And this is going to ensure that we're not leaking heat from the insulated pipe into the aluminium tile. And then we can hook up the sensor like this, and then the coolant loop is complete for these 4 steam turbines. And it's not going to be leaking heat into the setup, which is what we want. And then we do literally the exact same thing over here, so we just mirror it. So let's see if I can actually do this correctly. So this is going to go over here. We're going to put a bridge here. I'm not going to linger too long on this because you've already seen me do it once for the other side. But it is exactly the same. So we're going to send this over here. We're going to put a bridge here. That is going to just go down here. The exact position doesn't matter too much. You just want to expose the steam turbine as much as possible to the radiant liquid pipe to make sure that it's getting cooled. The conductivity is the main important thing here. If you're building out of superconductive materials and you have superconductive background, then perhaps you're not going to need as much radiant piping. But I like to overkill this anyways. You know me, I like my spaghetti, especially when it's yellow. So that's going to go in here. Again, we're going to bridge this down here over that pipe. And then we're going to send it down here and to bridge over this output pipe for the extraction steam turbines. Then that's going to go down here onto a bridge where we put our other water source. So that's just going to go here. And again, it doesn't matter too much if this is water or polluted water. We're going to set these both to polluted water. The polluted water is slightly better because it has a better temperature range, but they both have the same specific heat capacity. You just want your coolant to have as much specific heat capacity as possible so that the thermo aquatuners are working as efficiently as possible. Because the heat transfer effect of the thermo aquatuner is 140 kDTUs per second times the specific heat capacity of whatever element you're putting in it. So then that's going to come over here, and that is just going to bridge out of here. Then that's going to run through the sensor like this. And again, so what we're going to do is we're going to set these to the temperature we want our steam turbines to get at. These are going to be actively cooled. This bit can actually be exposed outside of your base once this is all done. And actually, you can do the same for this. You can have this exposed outside of your base when it's all done, if you want. But what we're going to do, just to illustrate the build, is we're just going to fill it up with some kind of conductive material. Now, what you could do, you can sneak a vent in here. Like, we can remove this tile down here, this tile down here. You can put a high-pressure gas vent in here and shove some hydrogen in this room. Obviously, not if there's liquids in here. You can shove the vent up here, and that would be fine as well. But long story short, we're just going to fill this room with hydrogen gas. It's quite conductive. You can also use oil on the bottom or some conductive liquid. So we're just going to fill these rooms with hydrogen like this. Again, just to illustrate how the build works. And yeah, some more hydrogen in here. So long as it's not a vacuum or some kind of unconductive gas, that's what you're going for. You can also put some temperature plates in here to help out with the heat transfer. Again, you can make these out of diamond. Just 2 on each turbine is fine, really. In here, we're just going to space them out sort of every other tile again, like we've done in the past. Doesn't matter too much what you're doing here. You just want to make sure the temperature plates aren't touching the insulated tile at all. So that's going to be what that looks like in the end. And that's actually all of the piping done for this. So the last thing to do is actually just to set up the power. And normally this is a build where we actually put a dev pump in, but we don't actually really need a dev pump in this case. Make sure that you're building the wire out of something that isn't going to melt in high temperature cases. So we're going to use iron in this case. And again, we're just going to wire each half independently. So we're just going to plug everything in here. And that's going to go... It's going to go like this. Doesn't matter too much what you do for this wire. Now, what I would say is, when you're actually extracting the power, I'm just building the wires like this to demonstrate how this works. When you're actually extracting the power, what you're probably going to want to do is either take multiple conductive wires out and put them onto transformers to go to your main power spine, like we talk about in my power transformers video, or you're just going to want to build a heavy watt wire in here and have a heavy watt wire joint plate and have it come out of here. You're not going to want the heavy watt wire going through these insulated tiles. I typically don't like building heavy watt wires in my builds. I prefer to just have loads of conductive wires so I can run them through tiles neatly and then just build transformers. So I'm not going to show you exactly how to hook it all up, but I'm just going to connect it all to show you that it works in this case. So the last thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to dump a pretty decent amount of thermal mass in here. Just from letting the steam vent erupt, we haven't ended up with very much steam in this room. The more thermal mass you have in this room, the less the temperature will fluctuate and the more even your power generation from these steam turbines is going to be. Normally we end up filling our steam turbine rooms with about 100 kilograms per tile of water, but we're going to actually want to max out the capacity of this to get the temperature as stable as we can possibly get it. And also to make sure the steam in this room doesn't get too hot. The more steam we have stored up here, the more stable the temperature will be in this room, and the less likely we are to get to the point where we're going to be melting lead or boiling crude oil or anything like that if you're trying to build it with other materials. And what I would recommend is just taking a water source. Doesn't really matter what. We'll just use a dev pump in this case. This one's set to water. And we're just going to dump it in here. We'll put a bridge here just to let the liquid in. So that's a fairly decent point to put it. And what we'll do is we'll just put another vent in here. We're going to put a manual switch in here instead. And we are going to turn off the vent once... We're going to turn off the vent once there's over 400 kilograms per tile of steam pressure in here. Any more, and these liquid vents are going to start to choke up because they're going to overpressurize occasionally just from how the water in here affects the steam pressure in general as it boils. But yeah, we're just going to want to fill this room with steam. So let's actually unpause it. So we haven't got any dev pumps or any dev power sources plugged in here. We're just going to solely power this off of the power from the steam. Now, what you can do as well is you can definitely put some batteries in here, and that's going to capture some of the heat. We'll just put them in the steam room, and that way any actual heat leakage from these batteries is just going to get recycled back into the build. So these thermal aquatuners aren't going to work at first. These steam turbines currently aren't getting enough steam to run. We're pouring more water in here. That water is cooling this whole room. So the room is below 200 degrees C, or in this case below 195 degrees C. So the room is heating up. We're going to keep pouring water in here until the steam pressure gets high enough we can actually run these steam turbines. Now, you can see from the green bar up here, red to green bar, how much power the steam turbine is generating and how much heat it's producing as a result. And if the green bar is all the way on this side, then it's producing the max amount of power, 850 watts. And at that point, some of the heat is being deleted if it's all the way over here. So what we want from these bars is we want the steam turbine bar to be as close to full as possible, but not quite full. And that's a sign that we're using all of the heat energy from the steam to generate power. So now you can see these batteries are filling up, and we've got enough power here to run the thermal aquatuner. So now the polluted water is going in here, it's getting cooled down, and that's going to actively cool the steam turbines. Each thermal aquatuner full of polluted water with full packets is going to transfer 585 kDTUs of heat from the coolant pipe to the steam room. And we position these thermal aquatuners on the outside because most of the heat is going to be coming in through this sort of metal block from the actual steam vent itself. So this is going to be our attempt to help sort of equalize the temperature in the room. And you can see in this case, because this vent hasn't been erupting very long, the steam over here has actually gotten to the point where it's cool enough to just run through this extraction turbine. So that water is coming out here. It's going through this vent, which is covered in a little bit of water, and it's dripping down the side here. So this is all of the 95 degrees C water that we're actually extracting directly from the vent. And again, because the green bar isn't completely full, we're using the power 100% efficiently. We're not wasting any power by deleting it with the steam turbine. So in terms of actually storing all of this power, you can either have a very large amount of batteries in a steam room, or you can use that power to heat something else up and store the hot object for use later with more steam turbines. I'm not going to explain too much about how to store power, but this is just how to actually get the throughput going. Yeah. Now, what you'll also probably want to do is you'll want these to stop working and stop removing the heat. You want these to stop removing the heat if the room gets below 140 degrees C. That's a fairly useful method to have as well. So we'll put a thermosensor here. We'll set that to send a green signal if above 140 degrees C. And then we're going to hook that up with some automation to these sensors as well. And that way we're going to make sure the whole room never gets cold enough under any circumstance to freeze the uranium blocks. So I'll be back in a minute once we've done that. So here's what it looks like once all that automation is built. You can see this room is currently below 140 degrees. So this thermosensor is now off, which is going to make sure that none of these steam turbines run until the room gets hot enough. Now, obviously, while these steam turbines aren't running, your thermal aquatuners aren't going to get power. So in practice, what you're probably going to want to do is hook up these thermal aquatuners to an external power source, so they can run independently of whatever's going on here. But as you'll see, once the steam vent erupts, the pumps are working again. In this case, we let the room cool down too much, so the liquid uranium melted and then it ended up pumping over here, and now you can see these are both broken. So this is why you don't want this room to cool below 140 degrees C, because otherwise the liquid uranium might move and then these locks will break and you'll have to rebuild the wires to get them to work again. What you can do is you can have a vacuum liquid lock over here and possibly a door, so you can re-access this room if need be. Yeah, so this is what that whole setup looks like one tile closer. There's a perfect vacuum in here because of how you poured the oil in, so your duplicant can just wander through here into this door. Some steam will escape from this steam vent room and condense over here into water. You may want to pump that out. You shouldn't need to go in here unless one of these uranium bits breaks. It shouldn't break if you've got the automation set up with the sensor as it is here, so the steam turbines only work when the room is hot enough. With this steam vent being geotuned, it's going to get hot enough very quickly. So you shouldn't have too many issues with that. If it's not geotuned, literally just build 1/2 of the build. And that's all you need to do, really. And once that's done, you can just remove all of the insulated tile around here. This room is complete now, so let's just remove all of these elements. But yeah, in essence, that's the build. So you can see we've got the steam vent, it's erupted, it's filled the room with steam. That heat is being transferred into this room, where these steam turbines will activate, and they will suck all of the heat out of the steam and turn it into power. You can use this to run a thermal aquatuner, which is going to cool down the whole network to whatever your target temperature is. This target temperature is quite low. It definitely doesn't have to be this low. It just has to be low enough to get these to operate. So we'll actually set this to like 15 degrees C. Then these won't have to run too much. There's room for some batteries in here, and all of the heat loss from the batteries will be recycled. So if you build them out of steel in this room, you shouldn't have any problems. If the room gets too hot, then these doors will open and stop any more heat from being transferred in. It should be noted that if this room gets above 200 degrees C, you probably are going to have to run the steam turbines and waste some heat to get the room back down below that temperature. So in this case, you'd probably want to manually set these to activate the steam turbines if you need to do that. But generally, this should be sufficient for making sure that these don't waste any power. And then once all of the steam has been cooled by transferring it into here, these thermocenters will be cool enough, and these two steam turbines down here will extract all of the actual water and send it out wherever you need it to go. So we've got two pipes here, but in practice you can pipe these wherever you want them to go, and you can just pipe it to the rest of your base and it'll be absolutely fine. We've left these bridges in here as well for where the power source is, so that could actually just pump down here into whatever you want to pump your 95 degrees C water into, and it's not going to cause any issues. So yeah, and then if we just have a look at the pipe overlay, this is what it looks like. You've got the petroleum pumping in here through the valves at 0.1 grams per second per valve, 240 grams per cycle of petroleum needed. And then you've just got your coolant running through these loops, running through the thermo-aquatuners. You can see the loops are filled all the way up because of how we position the bridges, and they haven't overfilled, and the thermo-aquatuners aren't blocked. They will run correctly when the liquid requires cooling, but it no longer requires cooling. And now we're just getting all the power out to send it wherever else we want. So power transformers, batteries, machines, you name it. And again, the automation, we just have automation for the steam turbines to make sure they don't activate if the steam is so hot that it would waste power. We have these thermocenters that will open the doors if this room gets too hot, to make sure it doesn't get too hot and cause these to start deleting too much heat. This thermocenter will make sure that the steam turbines don't operate when it could cool down the liquid uranium we're using here. So that will ensure that our drip pumps stay in place and that we can continually form a vacuum over the steam vent, which is what we've done here. These rooms will fill up with steam as they store it, but with the settings that we've got here and the number of steam turbines we've got, we can drain the heat out of this room quickly enough that these steam turbines will mostly be able to get all of the steam out of here before it builds up. Or in any case, you're going to get through a whole active period of the steam vent before it goes, until it goes dormant, before this fills up above 1,000 kilograms per tile of pressure. So even though it doesn't look like a huge amount of space, it is enough space to make sure that you're never going to overpressurize these liquid vents. And the steam vent is handled. And yeah, here's what the temperature overlay looks like. You can see these steam turbines are being kept nice and cool. You can't really see the difference in temperature between these two rooms. There is no difference at the moment. These doors are going to open again in a minute. But yeah, that's the build. So if you like what you've seen in this video, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more build guides for Oxygen Not Included. We are slowly covering all of the topics in our Sandbox Showcase series. I am going back to a few of them, and we're going to expand on them a little bit, like take them to late game scenarios. We're going to try and upgrade our builds so they can work when you geotune the events as well, because they added geotuning before, after I started the series. So I want to build more builds where you can either geotune the geysers or leave them alone, and it will still work either way. So you can look forward to that in the future. We do stream on Twitch. We play Oxygen Not Included Mondays and Tuesdays, usually between 7:30 and 10:30 British time. We also play other games like Dyson Sphere Program and Mega Aquarium occasionally. There's also a Discord where we hang out and we post memes and builds, and we do a lot of discussion of Oxygen Not Included. People are frequently showing off their builds in there, so if you have something you want to show off, feel free to provide it. And yeah, it's just good times overall, fun, fishy vibes. I think that's a good moment for Whiskers to take it away. So I'll see you later. Bye for now.
Whiskers sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: 999999999, Cyberdynier, FRD. Grey Area, Lumen, John Canon 86, Kujia Jizia, Neo Deus Machina, Sinister Plank, Static Icarus, Sweet Danger Kitty, The Bat Guy, The Max Not Binary, Uglavisk, and Who Knows Yo.